In the meantime, UEFA President Aleksander Ceferin, Simon, we speak about him a lot, has claimed that his organisation were right all along about Manchester City's financial fair play breaches despite their Champions League ban being overturned by CAS. This was back in 2020. Ceferin, he says a lot of things and he doesn't appear to bother about where it takes him.
I quite like that, though.
Yeah. UEFA were found guilty, for those who don't know, back in 2020. I beg your pardon, UEFA found City guilty back in 2020 and banned them from their Champions League for over 2 years. But on appeal to CAS, the decision was overturned.
Yeah.
So Ceferin is saying, as regards the ban, we know we were right. We wouldn't decide if we didn't think we were right. So he's sticking to his guns.
Well, I suppose he kind of has to, doesn't he? Because his organisation found them guilty and charged them. If he didn't believe that they were guilty in the first place, then with due respect to the organisation that he chairs and heads, it would be surprising. I mean, it would be surprising, but it was obviously quite surprising to see him in the director's box at Man City 2 days before Man City were in the Court of Arbitration of Sport, but that's a different discussion.
Yeah.
Look, I think there is a perception.
It was overturned.
Well, it was overturned and it was taken a different direction by the Court of Arbitration of Sport. And those that are in City's camp will say, read the detail. And those that are in other people's camp will say, I have read the detail, I just haven't interpreted it the way you have. Right? So the bottom line is that it's interesting because we had this Stefan Borsten the other day that talked about the Premier League having a better opportunity as a result of no time limits. And that's not true, he said. Well, I would disagree with that, because if you're committing fraud, then fraud has a much longer statute of limitation. The point is that there is, whether Manchester City like it or not, and the Manchester City fans think that it's a conspiracy theory against them. Me, as a former owner of Crystal Palace, would not have cared the slightest if I was in the division with Manchester City, because they'd have paid more money for my players and I wouldn't have been taking their spot anyway because they're a bigger and better club than me. So I wouldn't have had an agenda. The only agenda I would have had was if you're bucking the system and you're not complying with the rules. I think most people, and irrespective of what the reaction to this, most people that I've spoken to in and around football, positions of influence, and some of them very objective, think that Manchester City have a serious case to answer and that there will be consequences for it. I think they have a serious case to answer. And when they've answered it, we can all be proved wrong or right. My concern is that given the nature of influence and power and what's behind this, and if this were to be found that Manchester City had done the things that they were being alleged, not only would it be a football issue, it would be a diplomatic issue, because all of a sudden the reputation of a nation state would come into play, and the very thing that they wanted football for, which was image laundering and sports washing, whether they like it or they don't, will have been discredited. And that won't be a very good look for them. So that's the reasons why I think in the corridors of power, these deals get done in a different way. And all of a sudden, fait accomplis get dropped and deals get done and situations get managed. But it's interesting that Ceferin comes out and says these things, because I think there's a little... I mean, I'm a great critic of UEFA. I'm an even bigger critic of FIFA. But it's nice to see people having a little bit of gumption and the courage of their convictions, albeit they have vested interest in this because it's their organisation that found them guilty.
He's not hanging about. I mean, Ceferin's also been talking, Danny, about players who head to Saudi Arabia to grow the game. And, of course... Jordan Henderson fell into that category. He's gone out there to try and do his bit for the Saudi Pro League, had a look, and then further down the line, a lot sooner than anyone expected, said thanks but no thanks and came back. Now he's at Ajax. Ceferin says regards players heading to Saudi Arabia to, quote, grow the game. They go because the contracts are big. You can't blame them for that. He says if they're close to the end of their career, maybe it's a new adventure and they earn a lot of money. I don't blame them. But to say that you're going somewhere to help or grow the game is pretty much more or less a joke.
I think he's
not wrong, is he?
He's only saying what everyone else thinks. Fair play to him, yeah. It does show a bit of gumption. I think it's hard sometimes as a player to come out and state the bloody obvious, because you're leaving yourself wide open, and also there's an employer who's filling your pockets who's asking you to share a different narrative. So I do get it that they don't just blatantly come out and go, look, I'm only here for the money. You have to be delicate with it, a bit like the live golfers. Some of them are more delicate than others with how they frame it.
Yeah.
But Ceferin's right, isn't he? He's right.
Maybe it's a different episode, Simon, in my career, but keep the grow the game bit out of the narrative, because nobody believes you.
But that is the narrative that they're being asked to peddle. And, you're buying somebody, you're buying the player, and you expect him to do as he's told. And within that narrative is the idea that you're going to grow the game.
I think Ronaldo's one of the only few who could come out and actually talk about it. He's got him being there exposes other people to the league.
I mean, Piers Morgan broke this story, and I disagreed with the principles of it. Fundamentally, the bulk of it he was right on. £200 million. He went to Saudi for £200 million, or give or take it. Right. That's not because he's going to grow the game. If he was going for £5 million, he wouldn't. Fine, that's a byproduct of it, right? Yeah. But that's not his motivation. And it's interesting to see someone in a position of influence not interested in diplomacy, because we often see what we believe to be.
You're talking about Ceferin now?
Yeah, Ceferin. Yeah. Not interested in the player's perspective, because most of the time what comes out of players' mouths is absolute drivel. But in this instance, he's in a position of influence, and diplomacy is often played out. So this plays well into the narrative. It doesn't read well for the Saudis, because it tells you that he has a bit of disdain for the idea that all you're going to be able to do is buy it. That should give people confidence and comfort. We'll see. When it comes to the Saudis going to UEFA and saying we're going to throw a ton of money into a competition which we want you to comply with, or allow us access to. Yeah. What this should do is build up a bit of confidence that the concern that people feel is that the Saudis will disrupt the ecosystem and land at the top table and continue to be there, irrespective of everyone else being governed by financial fair play. This should tell you something, that Ceferin's put a flag down in the ground, that he sees the players' motivations, he doesn't think it's the right thing for them to be saying, he recognises the landscape, and hopefully he'll hold court and order when we get this inevitable situation that the Western media perceive it to be, that Saudi football's going to dominate and be at the top table and disrupt.
Well, Ceferin's also saying Saudi Arabia will never host a Champions League final. You can forget that.
Well,
according to him,
as Simon said, the flag's in the flag.
Well, he's put a flag down, and that's it, and that's good to hear and good to see, because
people change their mind though.
And yet, the poster boy Ronaldo said the other day that it now rivals or is ahead of the French Ligue 1. And the Saudis loved that.
Has he played there then?
The Saudis loved that.
No. Has he played there then? So he really doesn't know then. I mean, this is the same guy that told everybody on Piers Morgan's interview that he was marginalised out by the management of Man United and hadn't even met them. I take no notice of what Ronaldo says in terms of talk to him about the beauty of his play and his achievements. But he hasn't played in the French league, so I don't understand what that's about. And I imagine PSG and Lille and Nice and all those other sides would look at the 700 people watching a Saudi game and I think that's quite laughable.
Yeah.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.